It is midnight in Washington, 6 in London, and 2 on a Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Conn-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. As the rail union strike enters its third week on this Monday, the state-run rail operator declares it will hire 500 new railway workers to start work next month. And there is a high probability that North Korea could launch a provocation as early as next month and even carry out a fourth nuclear test. Now, that's according to the nation's intelligence agency. And in Bangkok, tens of thousands of anti-government protesters returned to the streets of the nation's capital to demand the immediate resignation of Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra. We'll have more on those stories, but first let us begin this Monday afternoon with a rail strike that enters its third week on this Monday. With subway and high-speed train operators running at 70 to 80% of normal levels, the state-run rail operator has announced plans to hire hundreds of new and experienced workers. The union refuses to budge, especially after police raided a union umbrella office. ARIRANG News Kim Hyun-bin starts us off.
As the railway strike rumbles into its third week, rail operations around the country remain severely impacted. To prepare for a prolonged strike, Korail announced on Monday that it plans to hire hundreds of experienced workers and interns who will be ready to work from January. Korea's bullet train KTX services are running at just 70% of normal levels. Commuters in the capital region are also being inconvenienced as subway services in Seoul were reduced to 85% of normal levels starting Monday morning. The country's industrial sector is feeling the pinch worse than the public, however, with cargo train services running at just a third of normal levels. Some companies say they are running low on supplies amid the gridlock. Adding to the frosty atmosphere between the strikers and the authorities, there was a major standoff Sunday between union members and riot police in downtown Seoul.
We will carry out the arrest warrants for the rail union leaders.
Hoping to round up key union leaders, hundreds of riot police surrounded the main office of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, a militant union umbrella group. Union members created a human blockade, locked doors with chains, and used fire hoses to push back police as they tried to enter the premises. Denouncing the police's actions, the KCTU announced that its members will launch a strike from this coming Saturday, December 28. The government continues to demand the striking rail workers return to work.
Point where the government cannot tolerate this any longer, as the prolonged illegal strike is inconveniencing the public and affecting the national economy.
Over 130 union workers taken into custody Sunday are currently under investigation, but the union leaders the police were hoping to get managed to get away. The strike started after the state-run rail operator Korail decided to create a subsidiary for a new KTX service, a move union members say is the first step toward privatization. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Now, in response to the escalating tensions surrounding the railway strike, President Park Geun-hye has defended the government's decision to send riot police to the protest scene, saying that if the government were to abandon its principles and compromise just to end the strike, there would be no future for the country, either economically or socially. While speaking at a meeting with her top secretaries on Monday, President Park stressed that the government should stick to its principles, especially during hard times, and work towards resolving the issue with the public as the first priority. While pundits say her comments reflect the Park administration's determination to stick to her principles and not back away from dealing with the railway protests. Meanwhile, Korea's two main political rival parties have responded to the government's use of force in Sunday's raid, with each party making its own proposals for how to resolve the conflict. ARIRANG News Kim Hyun-gil has more.
Korea's rival political parties had mixed reactions to a police raid that played out over a tense 12-hour period on Sunday as the rail strike rolled into its 15th day on Monday. Civic groups have since issued a series of statements denouncing the government's use of force in the raid on the headquarters of the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, an umbrella labor group. The ruling's Henry Party has defended the police action, saying it was justified because union leaders had defied their arrest warrants.
Using the police against an illegal strike is what the government ought to do to protect the rights of its citizens.
The main opposition Democratic Party moved quickly to protest the raid, demanding that 3 related parliamentary committees open sessions on Monday to find a peaceful settlement to the dispute. DP Chairman Kim Han-gil criticized the government's handling of the matter, saying the raid highlighted the Park administration's unilateral and dogmatic method of governance.
The government's use of force is not legitimate when discussion can be held to resolve the situation.
The DP has advocated for new legislation specifically designed to ban the privatization of the bullet train service. The Saenuri Party rejected that, but proposed the 2 parties sign a joint resolution stating that both parties are against the privatization of the core rail. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now, earlier on this Monday, an alliance of opposition party lawmakers submitted a bill to the National Assembly that calls for a special probe separate from the one being conducted by the prosecution into allegations that state institutions meddled in last year's presidential election. ARIRANG News National Assembly correspondent Kim Hyun-ji reports.
A bill that calls for a special separate investigation into allegations that state agencies interfered in last year's presidential election has been submitted to the National Assembly. The bill was drafted jointly by the main opposition Democratic Party, the minor opposition Justice Party, and independent lawmaker An Chol-soo. It targets the Defense Ministry, the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs, the Ministry of Security and Public Administration, and the Unification Ministry, in addition to the spy agency, whose former director is standing trial for allegedly ordering agents to post online messages to sway public opinion in favor of then-ruling party candidate and now President Park Geun-hye. In addition, the bill says civilians who are believed to have taken part in illegal activities should also be subject to a special probe. Further, the bill says the probe should target the presidential office, the spy agency, the prosecution, and the police for allegedly making attempts to downsize and conceal the results of earlier investigations and tamper with them. As for who should lead the special probe, the bill says a parliamentary committee should recommend 2 candidates and 1 be selected afterward. Saying President Park benefited the most from the electioneering scandal, Democratic Party leader Kim Han-gil stressed that a special independent investigation was necessary.
I repeat once again that if the Park administration and the ruling Saenuri Party do not accept our proposal, they will face an even stronger resistance from the public.
The ruling Saenuri Party strongly condemned the opposition's move.
To say that the prosecution's probe is poor and demand a separate investigation now is an attempt by the opposition to carry this issue into next year's local elections in June and use it to their advantage.
It remains unclear whether the joint bill will lead to the appointment of a special investigator, as launching a probe requires a majority of lawmakers to be in attendance in the plenary session and a majority of those voting for it. The ruling Saenuri Party holds 155 seats in the 300-member parliament. Kim Hyun-ji, ARIRANG News.
Now, this just coming in, North Korea could launch provocations against the South next year, possibly in the form of another nuclear test and potentially in the period from January to March. During a parliamentary committee session on Monday, the National Intelligence Service also said North Korea's artillery units are being reinforced and more military exercises are being held. The nation's spy agency also said Pyongyang could conduct a 4th nuclear test at any time. NIS representatives also offered an update on the recent execution of Kim Jong-un's uncle Chang Song-taek, saying that aides previously close to the man once considered the North number 2 had not been removed from their posts, and neither had the young leader's aunt Kim Kyung-hee. Meanwhile, South Korea and China will hold their first foreign affairs and security dialogue in Beijing on this Monday. Senior officials from the 2 nations' foreign and defense ministries will take part in the meeting to discuss regional and global security issues, as well as ways to further cooperate in those fields. And particularly, they're expected to focus on the security situation on the Korean Peninsula after the execution of the North Korean leader's uncle Chang Song-taek, and the escalating tensions in Northeast Asia after China's recent establishment of a new air defense zone. Well, the meeting follows an agreement between Presidents Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping during their summit talks back in June to strengthen the two countries' security dialogue channel. It seems like the economic gap between the two Koreas is still quite wide. New data from Statistics Korea on this Monday shows that South Korea's per capita gross national income was nearly 19 times larger than that of North Korea last year. The per capita GNI for the South was estimated at around 25 million, or roughly $24,000, while the figure for North Korea was about $1,200. South Korea's total trade volume was also over 150 times larger than the North, $6.8 billion. Now, the only sector in which North Korea outperformed the South was in coal production. North Korea produced 25.8 million tons of coal, which is about 10 times more than the South. And with the debt level of public companies here in Korea increasing by the year, the government has demanded that CEOs of those enterprises come up with a plan to reduce their debt and improve their management structure. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju has the details.
The total debt of Korea's 9 major state-owned companies has surged by 18 trillion won, or nearly $17 billion over the first 6 months of this year. The 9 enterprises include Korea Land and Housing Corporation and Korea Electric Power Corporation. Data released Sunday by the state-run management information provider of public agencies, ALIO, shows the increase in the 6-month period is over 70% of the total growth in debt in the year 2012. Analysts say it's highly likely the debt level of these 9 companies in 2013 will exceed that of last year, despite government efforts to rein in public debt. To tackle the growing debt, President Park Geun-hye has ordered the heads of major state-owned enterprises to make plans for reducing their debt and improving their management, and report their plans to the government during a meeting that will be scheduled for sometime in late January. This will be her first meeting with the leaders of public firms since taking office in February. A high-ranking government official says it will serve as an opportunity to check whether these companies have done their homework and raise the alarm on lax management. The government also has plans to remove the chief executives from their posts, even if their terms aren't over, should they receive poor grades on a performance evaluation that will be conducted next September. Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy Yoon Sang-jik on Monday slammed the leaders of public firms, saying they lack an awareness of how poorly their firms are managed and the determination to cut the mounting debt. Yoon rejected a set of reform measures submitted by state-owned energy companies and asked for a more comprehensive and effective plan by next month. He made it clear that the government will replace anyone who is insincere in pushing ahead with the necessary reforms, and emphasized that those people will have to hand in resignations even before the government takes action. Oh Jin-ju, ARIRANG News.
Well, in another sign that the Korean economy is on the road to recovery, Korea's labor productivity index rose by nearly 3% in the third quarter of this year from a year earlier to 98.1. The index indicates the amount of goods or services a worker produces in a given amount of time. Analysts attribute the increase to a 1% jump in the nation's industrial output thanks to growing consumption and investment in the construction sector, while labor hours have dropped by around 2%. The labor productivity index of the manufacturing sector increased by 1% during this period, while that of the service sector surged by almost 4%.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
The second half last, figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
ARIRANG News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring.
Now, tens of thousands of anti-government protesters in Thailand staged a rally Sunday in their latest attempt to force Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra to resign and put a halt to the national elections come February. Son Jung-in reports.
Protesters massed peacefully at several sites across Bangkok Sunday evening as part of ongoing rallies to topple Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and disrupt electoral candidate registrations. Blowing whistles, a symbol of the weeks-long protests, the crowd waved Thai flags and chanted, "Yingluck, get out." Demonstrators want to oust Yingluck and the influence of her brother Thaksin, who protesters accuse of corruption and abuse of power. Protest leader and former opposition lawmaker Suthep Thakksuban urged protesters to blockade the city's democracy monument to stop candidates from signing up for the election when registration opens on Monday.
We're going to sleep at the registration venues from tonight, and wherever they're going to relocate the registration venues, we will follow to show our power of disapproval everywhere.
He told supporters that forcing Yingluck from office is necessary to purge corruption and money politics, demanding political reforms before any new election. Earlier in the weekend, Yingluck formally proposed a plan for making political reforms, which includes having candidates take an oath to support the creation of a reform council and having the council's representatives come from all walks of life at local and national levels. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
The Japanese government has decided to extend the radiation cleanup surrounding the Fukushima nuclear power plant by up to 3 years. The Japanese media reports that the country's environment ministry will soon announce the new decontamination schedule, which was previously planned to be completed by the end of next March. Well, out of a total 11 municipalities subject to the cleanup, only one city, Tamura, has seen completed work. Quoting plant operator TEPCO, reports also say nearly 3 times the legal amount of radioactive strontium-90 was found some 25 meters below ground of reactor number 4, suggesting contaminated water may have seeped deeper underground than previously thought. And in sports news, free agent outfielder and Korean baseball star Choo Shin-soo has reached agreement on a 7-year, $130 million contract with the Texas Rangers, making him the highest-paid Asian player to ever play in the Major League. The 31-year-old's mega deal eclipses the previous record held by the New York Yankees' Japanese outfielder Ichiro Suzuki. Choo was one of the lowest-paid players in MLB history, making less than $400,000 when he became a full-time big leaguer back in 2008. And now Choo will officially become a Texas Ranger pending a physical examination in the next few days. And taking a brief look at how the local stock market is doing at this hour, Seoul shares rose to their highest in nearly 2 weeks on this Monday as sentiment was underpinned by an upward revision in third quarter U.S. growth data over the weekend. As of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was up 0.7%, trading at 1998, which is also the highest since December 11th, shortly after market opened. The Tech-Heavy Kosdaq was up by nearly 0.5%, while on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading stronger against the greenback at roughly 1,061 won. And now it's time for our daily arts and culture segment with our Lee Tae-ho, and today he's here to tell us about a musical with a Korean twist to it. Good afternoon to you, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon.
Now, so what do you mean by a Korean twist? I mean, we have homegrown musicals and we have overseas musicals coming in to play here. So what do you mean by a Korean twist?
Well, it's kind of an original story with a Korean element to it, but it's a wonderful musical that is sure for everybody to enjoy, no matter your age and where you're from. I don't want to give too much away, so let me go ahead and show you what I mean.
The beautiful story of Swan Lake is a tale of a doomed romance. It is a story of the lovely Princess Odette, who is cursed and turned into a swan. That is, until a young man pledges his undying love to her. But what if the story had a different setting and was told from a different point of view?
Think you know the story of Swan Lake? Well, think again. This is the Korean version of the masterpiece composed by Tchaikovsky, complete with traditional Korean costumes, song, and dance, titled The Black Swan.
The story is a twist on the classic tale, and it's told from the perspective of the Black Swan, who in this production is named Yoon. Yoon is the daughter of the sinister king of Ummakgol, where there is not a single ray of sunshine or even a blade of grass. She is alone in the dark, friendless, and unable to trust humans, until she meets the dashing Prince Hugh. Yoon instantly falls head over heels in love with the charming prince and swears never to commit another act of evil again. But alas, her feelings are not reciprocated by the prince, and the only one who consoles her is the beautiful white swan, Yeonhee. The meeting between the two swans leads to a story of love and betrayal, a story that has not been told until now. The story is set in Korea and was devised, choreographed, and produced here by the Yumin Performance Production Company. But, according to the director, great effort was put into keeping with the original story of Swan Lake, while also adding a distinctly Korean flavor.
We made sure the production did not scream out, "This is Korea, this is a Korean production," and we did this quite intentionally.
This struck me as very strange, so I asked why they wouldn't take a completely traditional Korean approach. And the reply?
If we had produced it in that manner, it would have seemed too unnatural. We felt that if what we had wanted was something very classically Korean, then we should have created a completely traditional Korean production, but that was not our intent.
The fusion of East and West went much further than just a story. The root of any musical is, well, the music. And even this was produced in synergy with the melodies of Tchaikovsky's original score. The classical Western score is played on traditional Korean instruments, such as the kayagun. Performer Lee Soo-jung, who plays the White Swan, says the choreography is another great example of the synergy between Korean and Western arts.
With regard to the dance, we performed together with professional dancers who specialize in Korean dance, so the performance is very Korean, yet very classical at the same time.
And a perfect example of that fusion is the dance of the swans at the beginning of the second act. The choreography for the White Swan is from the ballet world, while the other swans perform contemporary Korean dance. But the two hardly clash at all. Rather, they seem to flow in great unison with one another. Lee Ho-jung, who plays the Black Swan, said, "It's this fusion between contemporary and classical that makes this production so easy to watch."
Generally speaking, contemporary Korean dance and the like are not easily approachable in my opinion. But if you come to see our production, you will see it performed properly by professionals, so that is definitely something to watch for.
An original Korean musical that features a familiar tale with a distinctly Korean twist. That is what you get when you see Black Swan, which is currently running at the Naru Arts Center in Gwangjin-gu, Seoul until December 26th.
I think this is a very interesting approach to a foreign musical and putting a Korean twist to it. And what struck me the most was Tchaikovsky being played on the kayagun, which is a Korean traditional instrument. And that sounded very, I suppose, unique and mystique in a way. And what did you think about the performance overall, Taeho?
Well, the whole performance, the story, the costumes, and the whole concept of it was really, really original. And I love the approach that they took, making it very Korean, but the tale itself was very classic indeed. But there was a little bit more polishing up that they needed to do. But all in all, I think it was a great approach and a great idea as well.
And when you say polishing up, in which areas would you say they would need some improvement on?
Perhaps making sure that maybe the production points or the performance is a little bit more set up, I guess. But more than that, anything, it needs a little bit more time to kind of evolve and really become the complete package before it moves on to bigger stages, maybe all over the world as well.
Right, because definitely this is the first attempt by any production to put the Swan Lake and the Korean touch to it, and this is really a new genre they're creating, right? So hopefully this will go around the globe and and really establish itself as a real genre in the future.
Well, the thing is, I think I really see the seed planted in the soil for this production to become even more than what it is right now. Not just a local production or a domestic production, but maybe even go around the world and hit some big stages around the world, because it's very uniquely Korean, but a tale that everybody around the world really does know and is familiar with.
All right, well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for that, and then thank you so much for today, Taeho.
All right.
Here now is a look at the weather conditions in your neck of the woods. And that's all from me at this hour. Thanks to everyone for watching, and I'll see you back here at 4 p.m. Korea time.